So if you're in Ontario, Manitoba, in Quebec, wherever it is that you're joining from, listing that out would really help um, in the direction of where we're going today. So I'm just going to pull up the presentation and the slides. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Bimbola Akinoye, for those that don't know me, and I am also based here in Ontario. I run a service called the Canada Club, where we ship from Nigeria to Canada, and we also help with a bit of consulting and educational services, immigration services as well. I'm hosting this session. It's a free session on educational grants and opportunities that are available in Canada, because I know that there are quite a number of people that are here and they don't have this information. And one thing that I know that um, everybody in Canada knows is that a lack of information can actually make you miss out on like very vital opportunities that could be available just at your doorstep. So that's why we are hosting this session and subsequent sessions on maybe scholarships and opportunities that are also available in Canada. So please, if you're in any province in Canada, please let me know in the chat so that I know where you are joining from. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Right. Please, if you can mute yourself, that would be really helpful. Yeah. Can everybody see my screen?
Sure.
All right. Thank you. All right. So basically tonight, what we are going to be looking into would be the opportunities and the educational fundings that are available across provinces in Canada. I would also put a link in the chat for anyone who is interested in taking the conversation further. And that's because, of course, there are so many opportunities in Canada. We can't possibly cover everything like in the next hour or hour and a half. So if you want to maybe like get more information or maybe like book like some time after now to be able to like discuss or go over what your options are, you can fill the form and then put your province in the form as well. So I'm just going to put that in the chat so that anyone can access that. So a bit about me, who is hosting the session today. I've been in Canada since 2018, and I've also gotten grant and funding opportunities to be able to go to school. I have helped quite a number of people because I actually do a bit of educational consulting, like I mentioned earlier, over 80 people to be able to get some of these fundings in different opportunities and capacities in Canada, especially for postgraduate studies. So whether you're going to a private college or a public college, universities, those are like some of the areas of opportunities that I actually have helped people with that. So today, basically what we're going to be going over would be funding opportunities that are available and then breaking it down by the provinces, because that would really help with like, you know, dissecting what is available for you depending on where you live in Canada. So if you have any questions as well, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try to monitor the chat as much as possible to be able to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so yeah, so here we're just going over like an overview. Financial aid is very crucial for students pursuing education in Canada. This presentation aims to help like guide you through the process of applying and to even highlight the opportunities first and then navigating the process for different provinces or areas of Canada that you might be located. So the difference between a grant and a loan: most grants is as the name implies, they are non-refundable financial support that you do receive. So this one would be whether it's 10K, 20K, 25K that you get from the government, and you're not supposed to return the money back. So it's interest-free, and of course, is your money, basically, and it's not taxable. So, but for loans, with loans, you have to repay back with flexible terms to cover your educational expenses, living expenses. So depending on, and all these things are usually determined by different factors. So for example, your financial need, because most of the applications, they would ask you for things like your tax returns for like the last 2 years. Some provinces ask for way, like up to 24 months, but some others, you can just access the funding. You just need maybe like your last 3 months of pay slips, or your level of education as well also goes a long way. So for example, for masters, of course, the funding is way more. If you are going for like a private or public school and all those other factors. Also, a very, very important and major factor in these grants and opportunities would be that it's usually open to mostly permanent residents, Canadian citizens, and conventional refugees. So I find that a lot of people, maybe that are international students, they usually would ask like, oh, is there funding opportunity for me in Canada? Unfortunately, most of those grants are a way that the government looks to actually support the residents of Canada. So basically people that have more of a temporary status versus like a permanent status versus a temporary status. Okay. So there are so many opportunities, but I would highlight this one first because the Canadian Student Financial Assistance Program gives grants and loans, and this program is broken down by the federal government just to be able to access it at the province level. And like I mentioned earlier, you don't need to pay back grants, you don't need to pay back anything that is termed a grant, because some of the funding would include both grants and loans. So you need to really look at the application properly to know under what category the money that you're receiving comes. And you are also at liberty to actually take just the grant part and leave out the loan. You are not under any compulsory obligation to take both. So how much can you get? So the amount that you get, I think I already kind of like explained a bit of that, would determine by different things, different provinces and different bandwidths. There are some provinces that all they give is just financial aid, which is under a loan, and your family income, if you have any dependents, which would be like your children, maybe like a husband or a wife, the tuition fee, and what generally will be accessed as like your living expenses. Also, if you have like a disability, those factors will also go into what they would access in like granting the amounts that they feel might be good for you and your living condition. So how do you apply? Most of the grant opportunities that we'll be talking about today are provincial grants. And first, before you do anything, would be to determine your eligibility. Most of the grants have like eligibility criteria, and that would be some of what we've spoken about, like your status, your living condition, and other factors that might be listed in the eligibility criteria. Another thing would be to understand your funding, because a lot of times people just feel like, oh yeah, they gave me 20K. Out of that 20K, how much is coming to you? How much is going to the school? How much is going to your living expenses? How much is going to your books? And like the other things that you need to actually complete your education. Because sometimes people just hear grants and then they're just like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to spend all the money. You cannot spend all the money because the money was given to you for educational purposes. And welcome to anyone who's just joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat and I will be able to take them as we go along. All right. So the last steps, of course, in your application would be to submit a complete application, check through that you provided all the correct information. If you are asked for supporting documents, try to get all your documents ready as well. Most common documents that are asked to be things like maybe like a proof of residence and where you are or your province. Another thing would probably be maybe immigration status, proof of immigration status. You need that. For people that are conventional refugees, you would need the notice of decision. So that's the court ruling for your refugee case or your time at the court. Okay. All right. So like we had mentioned, introduction into what your eligibility is. So for those that receive, whether you want to go for full-time studies or for part-time studies, you need to either be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. And then protected status is like what I just explained. You've been to the court, you are not a refugee claimant. There's a difference between the both of them, because I feel like most people just say, oh yes, they are refugee. But are you like, have you been to the court or you are still waiting for a court date? If you are still waiting for a court date, under some of these grants and opportunities, you would not be eligible. And then if you are going with most provinces, one of their first major criteria would also please, can we mute if we're not speaking? Thank you. Most of the provinces would ask for proof of your residency in the province. So things like your lease agreement, or maybe a phone bill showing that you are actually living in that province. All right. So now we'll be going into like the breakdown of the grants. Like I mentioned to you, there's an overview for all the provinces. And that's why I thought to say to us that if we can write out our province, that would really, really help with like which one to dissect first. Because if we have maybe more people in Ontario, I think we should do the Ontario first, and then we can go over other provinces as we go along. What province are you? You can just write that in the chat. I'm just going to pull up the form also that helps me with the information for the funding. Just a second. So if you can just write out your province in the chat, that would really be helpful. So I know in what province you are, and we'll take that province first. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So I have that link in the chat. If you are able to fill that link as well, it would really help me out in highlighting the areas of opportunities for you. Okay. So I can see quite a number of people in the chat are in Ontario. Ontario, then Quebec, Alberta. Okay. So I think we can do Ontario first, and then we'll probably go to any other province. Or maybe we should just do Alberta, because Alberta is like the next slide anyways. Can everybody see my screen? Yes? Okay. All right. So, so the first opportunity that I'll be going on would be the Alberta Student Aid. And if you're in Alberta, it would be nice to have this link, because we can't really go over like the breakdown of everything that will be needed, but this is the link for the Student Aid in Alberta, Canada. They offer grants, loans, scholarships, and awards to help you cover your costs. Usually the loans are interest-free while you study. You don't have to pay back while you're a student. Most of them are, you have like a grace period up until like 12 months after you finish school. So if you have a question, maybe you can just keep your hands raised so that I can maybe take the question after, because if I'm taking questions in between, I might not be able to cover everything that we have to cover today. All right. So that's for Alberta. Then for the The eligibility criteria, you need to qualify for the student aid to maintain academic progress. You also need to be a resident of Alberta and obviously proof that you do have financial need and be enrolled in a program that is approved by the student aid. So the reason why I asked us to fill the link in the group chat would be I can send you more detailed information about the grants or the opportunities that are in Alberta that I have, because we can't go over everything right now. So for the application, you need things like your personal information, social insurance, your Alberta student number. You would also need like your income from the last year, that's the income tax return, academic information, and financial information. If it's like maybe a child who still is, maybe the application is made by the parent. So that would be for Alberta. I'm just going to go to the one for Ontario. I see that there are so many people from Ontario. Let me just click there. So for Ontario, we do have, sorry about that. For Ontario, we do have the OSAP. OSAP is the Ontario Student Assistance Program and is run by the Ministry of Colleges and Education, funded by the federal and provincial governments. It also provides funding in the two areas like what I said earlier. You would get either student loan and you would also get grants. The grants is the money that you don't have to pay back, and then the loans you must pay back once you're done with your school. The OSAP covers things like your tuition and other mandatory fees, books and supplies when applicable, childcare if you have a child, living expenses, and a living allowance for people that are full-time students only. So there are a lot of people that actually do take OSAP. It's very, very common in Ontario. Quite a number of people have either taken OSAP at some point in their lives or they know somebody who has taken the OSAP program. Who is eligible to take OSAP? It's open to Canadian citizens, the permanent residents, protected persons, and also the protected person status is for people that have been to court. If you're not eligible for OSAP, if you don't meet academic progress requirements or you don't have financial aids, anyone who has also defaulted on like a student loan in the past or have like grant or bursary overpayment or multiple outstanding, if you filed for bankruptcy as well or made a consumer proposal. So bankruptcy and consumer proposals are like decisions that people make. Maybe, for example, they have quite a number of debts. So they consolidate those debts and then they begin to pay them like in smaller amounts. You will not be eligible as well if you've reached like a lifetime limit on the student loan and the funding opportunity. Because there are some times, you know, a lot of people always ask, how many times can I take OSAP? Of course, you can take OSAP for as many times as up to 4 times or more. But there are also times when you actually do have the limits on it. So for every category of grant opportunities, there are actually very, very stringent conditions. We can't possibly dissect everything here right now. But like I said, if you need more information or you want to set up a call to go over like your options, you can fill the form in the chat in the meeting. If you're an international student, you're not eligible for OSAP. And if you live in any other province aside from Ontario, you're also not eligible for OSAP funding. Okay, so I'll just take this hand raise. I think it's Van or somebody who raised their hand. V1, do you still have a question?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I think you've just answered my question based on this this who is not eligible.
Okay.
It's the background noise. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I was just saying, I think you just answered my question based on this who is not eligible, because I was going to ask a question about, let's say if you're working full-time, for instance, and let's say your income should be able to make that, tuition payment, but due to certain commitments, you're not able to meet up, will you still be eligible for OSAP or OSAP? I think that's the question. For OSAP, would you be eligible for more of the grant or more of the loan, which I don't know. So that's the question I have.
Okay. Well, thank you for asking your question. The thing is that the main or the base requirements is actually the status, which is the immigration status. If you are a student or maybe you're on a work permit and you're even able to provide proof that, okay, you're not able to pay or you need some help with going to school, unfortunately, you're not eligible. It's usually people that are Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or the conventional refugees that can only access OSAP. Some of these conditions, of course, are added from time to time because of different reasons. Like, for example, the default in the student loan, because there are some times that, the OSAP, you're given a grace period or something called a grace period, probably like some schools with like 6 months, 12 months, even up to 24 months. And there are even cases where if you cannot pay back the amount, the government still gives you another grace period to actually apply for like an extension to be able to pay the amount at a later date. All right. So anyone who is not a resident of Ontario, of course, is not qualified for the OSAP as well. Just like with most other provinces, if you don't live in that province, the grants or the funding opportunities by the government would not apply to you because the province would definitely take care of their residents first. All right. So what do you need to make your application for OSAP? You would need the line 15,000 for your tax since we're in 2024, you need that for 2022. You will need your PR card, your citizenship certificate, or if you're a protected refugee, like I said, a notice of decision. So the notice that you got from the court when you went for your hearing, you would need that as well in your application. You will need a marriage certificate or a divorce document if you're divorced, separated, or whatever the case might be. For children, if applicable, they will need their birth certificate, SIN number, and also if you filed a bankruptcy or consumer proposal, the discharge documents would be applicable for your application. So for those that are married, you would need to also add your spouse in your application because you need their tax information as well, and also a proof of marriage for the application and as well as their SIN number. So you need to add all that in your application, and that would guarantee you accessing the OSAP application. So for Ontario as well, if you want to learn more about the Ontario Student Assistance Program, which is the OSAP, this is the website. If you want to write it down, or you can take a picture of the website to go and learn more about it. So like I said, we can't really dissect like the main details of everything. We're just providing this information for anyone who's interested, depending on that province, to know what is available for you and how you can, get these opportunities as well. The money that you borrow, like I said, like you get from the government, which is a loan, there is a grace period, and after you graduate, they expect you to return the money back. At least the monthly payments would also be based on like the amount of money that you did get. And also I feel that it's I'm talking to us because I'm sure there'll be a lot of us that will definitely have further conversations about like accessing funding or opportunities with the government. To be honest, I feel like a lot of people take some of this funding and they do not use the funding for what it's given. It's very important that we try our best to use the money for which you received it, because if those kind of things are like on your record, or maybe you didn't like pay back the loan, for example, those things can impact your ability to be able to access any other type of funding in the future. So it's very important that you use the money for which you got the funding for. Okay. So I have one question here. I believe that this question will be MBA from Didi. It says, how many times can you access grants? For instance, if you already got a grant initially for like a diploma and then you want to go for an MBA, can you still access a grant? The answer is yes. So let's say, for example, if for example, you're in Ontario now, I'm not sure what province you are. If you did take a loan or a grant or the opportunity to actually go to maybe like to go for like a diploma in maybe community service work, for example, and now you want to further your education, yes, you can apply for the grants or the loan. Well, the thing is, usually the loan estimator is what determines how much would be a grant and how much would be a loan. But like I mentioned in the beginning, you are also at liberty to pick what part. So for example, if you're getting funding maybe up to like 38,000, out of that 38,000, maybe 20,000 would be the grant, 18,000 might be the loan. So if you wanted to take just 20,000, you're at liberty to take just 20,000 and, fund the remaining part of the studies by yourself. A lot of people do that. Even when I took my funding opportunity, there was an opportunity for me to just take the grants and the loan, and I did just the grants because I just felt like it might be better for me, because you don't want to get the loan maybe because of interest, because once you do not meet up with the terms of paying up the opportunity, you would start to accrue interest. So sometimes people feel like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to take the grant and keep it going. So yeah, you can access the opportunities to go for an MBA to further your education. If you did not default before, remember when we went over the details of who is not eligible, right? For people that default here, if you check here, if you've defaulted on a student loan before, the possibility that your application might be rejected is a very high one. Okay. So the next question here is, when applying for diploma for 2025 September school year, which notice of assessment will OSAP require? So you would have to get your OSAP, notice of assessment for 2023. But if you're making your application from now, I guess you might just have it handy maybe to have 2023, and then of course the one for 2024, or even if you have also the one for 2022. I mean, you can never over submit documents, right? Highest if you, and the thing is, with OSAP, you actually upload your documents. So you don't have to necessarily send your documents in by physical mail, which is like maybe like going to the post office or sending it to their office. So you do all the application or all the filing online. You just need to scan your documents on the government's portal. Like I said, there's no like in-depth details into like the application or the process, because we have 10 provinces and we're just on the second one. And this session is just about an hour and 30 minutes. So if you need more information, you can fill the form in the chat, and I'll be happy to set up a call with you to be able to go over the information that might be necessary for you. All right. So I'm just going to continue with the next province. Okay. So I think I saw Ontario. Oh my God, there's so many Ontarios here. Okay. So New Brunswick. Sorry. Yeah, so for New Brunswick, the New Brunswick also offers very similar funding opportunities, just like other provinces. They have a student financial assistance, which offers funding for schools through two kinds of money, the student loan and also the grant and bursary opportunities as well. To learn more about the information, you can go to www.2gnb.ca. Like other provinces as well, the funding opportunity covers your tuition, your books and your supplies when applicable, your transportation, childcare if you have children, your living expenses, and also the incidental allowance. That's for part-time students only, and any other related costs for full-time students. It's very, very important that before we start our applications, that we have most of the documents that will be required for processing. That makes it a lot more easier. It also reduces the stress of maybe having a returned application, which means that the financial aid or student aid office might not honor your application simply because it's incomplete or some of the documentation that they have asked for is not included in your application. So it's very important that you get all your documents ready, check through the eligibility criteria, and then you make your application. So yeah, to be eligible for the New Brunswick Financial Assistance, the loan and grant opportunities, like I said, you must be Canadian resident or a Canadian citizen, a protected person, or an individual registered under the Indian Act, regardless of your citizenship. Also, you need to be a New Brunswick resident as defined by the program, which means that you do physically reside in New Brunswick, and you need to probably prove that with a proof of address, which is like maybe your NEPA bill, your phone bill. Did I just say NEPA bill? Your electricity bill or your lease. Those are documents that are acceptable as proof of residency. And then you would also have records showing that you need financial support to be enrolled and qualified. There are a lot of other conditions that you can find on the website for New Brunswick. So another thing would be that they also would take into consideration whether you've defaulted in like a student loan before, you maintain a satisfactory scholastic standard, and also be taking at least 60% of the full course load, or at least 40% if you're a student with disability. If your course load is less than 60% or 40%, you may be eligible for the part-time and not the full-time assistance. So they have different criteria per province, as you have seen now, because like if you see for Ontario, the conditions are not the same with New Brunswick, for example. Another thing is that for you to be able to qualify in New Brunswick, you have no history of abuse. That's if you are 22 years old or older, that means that your credit has to kind of be in good standing, and it's not and that's for the provincial funding only. That means that your credits, you have maintained good standing in your credit at least over the period of time. Like I said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll try to keep my eye on the chat as we go over some of the slides. So for New Brunswick, that's everything. The website for New Brunswick, if you want to write it down, is this one. It's at the lower part of the slide, so you can take that down and go and learn more about the grants and the other eligibility criteria that qualifies you to access this funding. Okay, so for newcomers with no tax history, is somebody asked the question now, so I'm taking the question asked in the chat. For newcomers with sorry? All right.
Sorry.
So is someone speaking? Okay. So for newcomers with no tax history, is there an alternative? Yes. Well, we know that, of course, if you came into Canada, for example, this year and you're a permanent resident, you will not have record for previous years. When you are making your application, there are some exemptions that might be allowed. So you will need to, of course, further proof that you live in that province, or at least you have lived there for at least a period of 6 months. I usually would advise people, depending on the province, and I cannot give one answer fits all. If you're able to fill the form in the chat, I will be able to, maybe talk to you. That's Damilola Blessing. I might be able to talk to you after to be able to set up like a call with you to go over like what your living condition is, what kind of educational grants are you trying to go for, what level of education, because the different levels determine like some of the conditions that might apply. Okay, so the other province that we have here is, I saw someone from Manitoba. So just like with every other province, Manitoba also has their rules and regulations. They have the Manitoba Student Aid. The Manitoba Student Aid provides financial assistance for post-secondary studies in form of loans, which is the one you have to pay back. And then you have bursary and grant opportunities for eligibility for the students as well. So to learn more about what is available for you in Manitoba, please write down the link. It's www.edu.gov.mb.ca/MSA. To be eligible for the funding opportunities, again, you must be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, which is a landed immigrant, or protected person. These status are some of the most basic requests or requirements to be able to access the funding. So you must also show proof that you're a resident of Manitoba, and you can do that by showing like a lease or like a cell phone bill, or your electricity bill, your utilities bill as well, a driver's license, things like that would also help. Another criteria would be that you must be studying at a designated school. And if you are not, you can check the schools and programs section in the websites on the screen to be able to check to see what you are qualified for. Okay. So for those that are in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, some of the loans are also coordinated through the same portal for almost every, in fact, every provincial government disperses their funds through the National Student Loan Service, which is the National Student Loan Service Center. This helps with the processing and disbursement of funds. The government of Canada, they're also kind of like trying to integrate all their processes to actually follow through the process where everybody can apply from the same authority, and the disbursement of the funds are easier and faster as well. So for those in Manitoba, this would be your website to go and check for more funding opportunities as well. Does anybody have any questions before we move to the next province? Okay. So the next one would be the British Columbia. That's for those that are in Vancouver and the likes, right? Same with as every other province that we've spoken about earlier. The British Columbia Student Aid BC, that's the name of their own program. It's usually, it helps with the cost of post-secondary education for student loans, grants, and scholarships. And they also have help with, of course, loan repayment for those that might default. Because, the governments actually do realize that there are some times that you actually take this money, you go to school, you have your education. Unfortunately, life happens. And as we know, of course, the job market these days is very, very tough. It's quite competitive that sometimes you might even go for this education, and in the end, you might not get the job immediately. So they do have grace period for repaying back the loans, or some of the loans in some provinces are even kind of like interest-free, so that it helps people with like the application, and also time to be able to pay back the amount that is owed. Okay, so go to this website if you're in British Columbia to be able to get funding opportunities and also the criteria for Vancouver. And some of the criteria, like I mentioned before, is as listed here. To receive assistance, you must meet at least one of these. In fact, if not all, British Columbia, they actually do stress that you must meet all of the criteria. You must be a permanent resident or have protected person status. You would need a valid Canadian social insurance number. You would be a resident of British Columbia, of course, and be enrolled in an eligible program of study at an institution that is recognized by the government. As you might have heard or seen in recent times, some people actually do have some challenges with like maybe getting fake registration or fake admission letters, you know, those kind of things. You can easily verify, you know, why I'm talking about that, this brings to mind something that actually can help everybody. When you're doing your research for your schools, go to the provincial websites and check for colleges, universities, whether it's public or private college you want to go and check on the website to see if they are government approved or government affiliated colleges, because that would save you a lot of headache, especially for people that are going to private colleges. Because if your school is not, for example, eligible for OSAP or eligible for maybe like student aid, and you go and make the application, you spend all these hours putting in or putting together an application, and in the end, the school does not have access to government funding, you would really have wasted a lot of time, effort, and energy to put that, right? So it's better for you to go through the website of the province and then check the school out. And then another criteria would be, of course, your demonstration of financial need. So like, for example, I will speak more on Ontario also. There are some people that because they earn high, the amount of funding that they get is less. And that's because in the eye of the government, you have enough money, or you are not, quote unquote, you're not suffering, right? You're not in financial need. So for example, if somebody is a project manager or you are earning maybe like 100,000 and above a year, in the eye of the government, you don't particularly have financial need, you know? They might still approve your application, but the funding opportunity would not be as somebody that maybe, for example, they were on maybe unemployment or they are earning less than like 35,000 a year. So those things, they actually do evaluate it. And that's one of the major reasons why they do ask for your tax documentation for like the last year or the last 2 years or the last 3 years, so that they are able to evaluate that. Because what is on your tax return or notice of assessment will help them be able to draw their conclusions on, okay, this person, their eligibility would be this will be the bandwidth of their eligibility, simply because we see that they have a means of income, compared to maybe like you as a single person, for example, who is earning 100,000, you have no dependents, you have no other responsibility tied to you or your record. Then there's somebody who maybe like has a family of 4, has no job, or is earning maybe less than 30,000. Of course, their own grant opportunities would be way more than the person who is earning 100K in a year. All right. So another eligibility criteria here would be that you make academic progress and achieve satisfactory standing in your school from your post-secondary education. So those things are actually very important because, you know, sometimes, you know, these grants are, of course, the government's way of actually supporting you with your studies, but you also need to put in an effort to actually at least excel in your studies. You cannot be maybe, for example, and just to tell you guys too, why I'm saying this is because sometimes people take monies and they don't use the money for what they took the money for. Those kind of grants usually are very easy to be converted into a loan. If you don't use the money, or maybe the government comes to know that you're not taking your classes, or maybe the school reports that, okay, you've missed or you've been absent for a particular period, it's possible that your grants will become a loan. All right. And I have a question here. Will defaults in the loan affect credit score of the person? After a period or after the grace period elapses, if, for example, you are still having a challenge with paying back your loan, it's important that you keep the government or the financial aid office, as it is, in the loop that, okay, I am still trying to pay this money. I have not been able to get a job, for example, or this is my financial situation. Most times people just go and don't say anything, and then the government is the one that is now chasing you. If after a while the government actually tries to retrieve like at least some sort of commitment of payment arrangement with you, and they are not getting ahead or making a headway with like the payments, it's possible that the loan would be transferred to a third-party collection agency. And then that could now start impacting your credit score. If you want to send a message, I'm actually reading this because I can see my phone, because some people are sending me direct messages. I would prefer that you write your questions in the chat so that everybody can see it. And then also, I can also see it on the screen here. So because I'm looking at my phone is why I can see some of the questions, but I'll keep answering them. But if you have a question, please write them in the general group chat. Christina, your hand is raised. I can take your question now.
Okay, thank you. So my daughter is going off she's going to University of Brock. She won't be living on campus, but she'll be living with me. And I just want to know what she's taking. I think she's taking like business management. So I just want to know like what grants would be available for her, especially since she's gonna be living with me. Like I'm a single parent, not really earning a whole lot. So I just want to know like what she would qualify for. We want to apply for this September
Okay.
in
Thank you
Ontario.
so much. You're in Ontario, because that was my next question.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
so my next question was going to be, what province are you? Because if you are in Ontario, you can actually do, let me put the link in the chat again. You can fill the form here, but I can answer your question. She can get funding through the OSAP. That's the Ontario Student Assistance Program. That she could get funding from 2,500 up to 40,000, depending on what program she's going for, the income level, and if you have documentation to support the fact that this is your income as her mom, and of course, with the other documentations that might be needed for the application. So if you feel that we can take the conversation further, I could reach out to you to set up a call with you to go over what your options are, and even if you want, also help you with like looking at some of the schools that might be available for the course that she would like to study. Okay, I can see you gave me a direct question before for massage therapy.
Okay, yes. There's one more related to her because she is going to a university already. But my thing was like, if she wanted to like continue to live with me, does she get extra funding for like housing costs, for like rent and stuff like that?
So based on the program, the length of the program, and also the tax assessments, those are the factors that will determine to what extent the government will be supporting the application. So for example, of course, she's your dependent, so it will be more of your financial outlook that will determine how much she's able to get. And yes, you do have living expenses because they do make the calculation. I mean, when we set up the call, maybe when you go over like the loan estimator, by the time we put in some of this information, you would be able to have access to how much it is, or an estimate of how much you're going to get. And it will also break it down into like, okay, this is the grant aspect, this is the loan aspect, because you need to input some information, like, for example, how much is the school you're trying to go for, what is the tax assessment figure, all those things go a long way in determining how much the grant or opportunity that you might get would be. All right. So we can always, you can fill the form and then I can always set up a call with you after. Okay. So does anyone else have any questions before we go ahead? Okay. Okay, so I've gone over British Columbia and then the Alberta one. So I also have slides for other provinces, but if they are not represented in the call, sorry, is somebody asking or speaking? Okay.
How much 20, how much 10 in 1 hour? 10 trips.
Sorry,
1 hour.
Antonia. Okay. Okay, so I've muted Antonia. Okay, so if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to ask. I would want to bring this to a close 7:30 since we don't have other people from other provinces. But if you need to speak with me, ask any other questions, or find out the grant opportunities that are available in other provinces or even within the provinces that we'll discuss today, please feel free to fill the form and I'll reach out to you at some point this week, or I could send you an email with like all the other funding opportunities that are available. Somebody's hand is raised. You can please go ahead.
I think you answered it in the chat. I was just asking about like any unique funding for like medical lab techs, or what was the other one? Or like massage therapy.
Yes.
But I think you mentioned OSAP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, yes, sure. And the thing about OSAP is, and I'm speaking on OSAP because I noticed a lot of people are here in Ontario. There are so many colleges, there are so many diplomas. You can go to university. The funding, there was somebody that we assisted last week that got funding up to 46,000. He had a family of 3, but he didn't work in the last year. So like I said to everyone during the call, the truth is the government is usually the one, of course, it's not the government, but like the people in the student aid or financial aid office would be the ones that would estimate based on different factors how much they feel like you're eligible for. It's not a thing of, I can't tell you now that, oh, Christina, when we speak, of course, you get up to 30,000. I might even tell you that, and in the end, you get way more than 30,000. I could tell you 30,000, and then in the end, you get less than 30,000. So there are so many factors that come into play to determine how much you can get. I think we went over that at the beginning of the slide. I'll just put that up again. How much can you get, right? So if you look at the screen now, you see that these are the things that actually do determine how much you can get. Because there are sometimes some provinces are more generous than some others, if I would say it like that, you know. Some of the provinces that we have, for example, I think Quebec's system is a loan-only system. They don't have like a grant opportunity, for example. So those that live in Quebec, in Montreal, you know, they don't have the opportunity of like accessing grants because the government just provides loan and then there's a grace period for you to pay back. So like I said, every province and their provincial government determines what works best for them. Of course, the federal government provides like a general framework, but it's the provinces that usually administer the funding and they determine how much they are willing to give and what they want to give. All right. So I hope this session was really helpful to everyone who joined in. If it was helpful to you, please let me know in the comments, please. You can write in the chat. I will take a look at the chat very shortly. And then I would answer any questions as well. Somebody had asked about Quebec. I want to go over the funding opportunities that are in Quebec.
Sorry, I
So
have a question before you go to Quebec.
sure. Hi.
Hi, I'm based in Ontario.
Right.
And my question is, I had a loan already
Yeah.
that I'm not going to name the company because obviously conflict of interest. So I had a loan already, but I paid it off.
Right.
Now, that was to do one course. Now, I want to now go do further study. So I want to apply for a master's. Will it impact me if I use if I go back to do more studying? So what I did before was different to qualify me and get a license in my field. But now I want to go further. So now I want to do masters. Does it impact you to come back again to another company and say, okay? And obviously my record is good because I paid the other one off. It's actually paid off now. How is that? How does that go?
So far as you didn't default in your loan or in the agreement, I think you're free to apply. Just ensure that you properly document with the school that I deferred my admission. Whatever funding, for example, if you did get funding that the school got from the government, they would have to return it until when you're ready to start your educational journey with them. And in this
okay, it wasn't deferred.
Okay, I thought I heard you say you deferred. Okay.
No. I complete the course. I got my license, complete the course, pay back the money. I just want to go further to advance my standard of living, get a higher career, just the usual reasons. But I was told I need to get a master's. So this is what if I come back to do a master's, doesn't impact you that you had a loan before?
No, so far as you did not default in your loan, I do not think that that would impact anything. We talked about how many times you can actually access, for example, you said you're in Ontario, right? How many times you can actually access OSAP, for example. You can go for OSAP as up to 4 times. So far as every time that you did your application and you were granted the funding or the opportunity, it was paid back in good time and you're in good standing, then I do not think you have any problems with accessing higher education or going for any other or furthering your studies.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem at all. All right, so for Quebec, I know that somebody had asked about Quebec. I have posted the link for Quebec. I'm not sure why. I think my my slides is not bringing up or populating my Quebec properly. So you can go on that site to find out everything about it. But I do have it open here. I don't know if everyone can see my screen. What the opportunities in Quebec are and some of the terms of like their criteria for studying as well. So for the loans and the opportunities as well, you can check for the eligibility. The base eligibility, of course, would be just like every other province. You must be a resident of Quebec, you must be a Canadian citizen, a refugee, a protected person, and you must be enrolled in school. And then Quebec has a maximum debt limit. So the amount of loan that you can obtain in Quebec is 30,000, from 30,000 to about 70,000. So whether it's for university education, you can go from 30,000 to 70,000. If you change your plan, your debt limit will be revised, and then the government will step in to provide the funding as usual. So how is the aid calculated in Quebec? Just like every other province, they also use your income, your eligibility expenses, your family situation, your level of education, and the income of the parent or sponsor or the spouse. So like I said, for example, especially in the cases of children that are below 18 or 16, the parent's financial situation is what is usually used as a determining factor to know how much of funding will be provided for the child. All right. So to apply in Quebec also, you need to complete your application and also choose like your financial institution, and then the disbursement of the funds will go through that process. So I hope I was able to answer the person that was asking about Quebec. For more information for Quebec, the link is in the chat. I think that was JAK that asked about Quebec. The link is there, so you're able to make your application. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We have another session coming up, but that would be for scholarships and opportunities that are outside of Canada. We have some for Canada as well. I will be bringing up one of our very, very dear team members. She handles scholarships for countries like Europe, America, even scholarship opportunities here in Canada, where you can actually put forward a strong application to access funding to be able to go to school. So please look out for that from us. We'll send you an email or share an invite again when we are hosting that session. So if this session was helpful to you, please let me know. If there are no other questions, I would be closing up the session. But if you have a question, please feel free to ask before we wrap up the session. I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us and everyone who stayed to the end. I hope that you found this very helpful.
Yes. Is it too late to qualify for scholarships if they're already outside of high school? If your child is already outside of high school?
I do not think so. I mean, scholarship opportunities are actually even better in my opinion, because if you're able to put forward things like a strong statement of purpose, the reason why you need the funding, and of course, proof of academic excellence, you could qualify for like scholarships. And if your essay, sits well with whoever is reviewing it, you should be able to qualify for that.
Okay.
All right. So I would post the link in the chat one last time for everyone. If you want to have like the slides, also share more information with us about like your educational journey, or you want us to walk you through applying for some of these grants, please fill the form, the Google Forms in the chat, and I'll be happy to reach out to you at some point this week or next week. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a great evening and enjoy yourselves. I hope to see you guys in our next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.